with respect to their privacy. And the fundamental assumption for many people here is I have nothing to hide and it doesn't matter. Well, let's say you're working on a major business deal that's international. Let's say you're bringing together a disruptive technology that could create life being better for more people around the world. And government entities start to hear, and you go from below the radar to on the radar. And you have a Gmail account. They have access to all your emails, all your communications, all your contacts. It even bothers me that when It's Rainmaking Time goes on YouTube, that anybody that comments or sends anything immediately is locked onto that email account. So I don't even use it. People can write whatever they want. I never respond. I never deal with it. And the other thing that's of great concern is the level of core integration. So when you're online, let's say you're looking at Huffington Post, that connects to Twitter, connects to Facebook. Everything is all interconnected. How do you unconnect it? Once you're connected, even now Skype has changed. They say now, would you like to talk to your Facebook friends? Who knows what's going on? The other thing is that I was told a year and a half ago that Windows 7 has a backdoor to NSA. I don't know any of that. I also have nothing to hide and nothing to worry about. But the fact that there's back doors, the fact that things are all integrated, the fact that governments can come and collect whatever they want, whenever they want, never even tell you, it's an unequal playing field. In fact, it's like David and Goliath. Things are stacked up against activists, stacked up against whistleblowers, and we need whistleblowers around the world desperately. And people put their lives on the line. It very much worries me that whistleblowing is being criminalized. It worries me deeply that you can go to a journalist and force them to give up the sources or jail them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's another thing that I'm extremely concerned about. I wasn't really aware of how bad the situation was until I started to work on both, the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, which is an attempt to create a safe haven for freedom of information, expression, and speech in one spot. Part of that law is whistleblowing legislation for Iceland. And actually, parts of it were inspired by the U.S. whistleblowing laws because of the development under the Obama administration on criminalizing whistleblowing. We've had to reconsider it and look at laws from elsewhere, because you used to have beautiful laws, but they are all being taken away from you, which is very sad to see. I think at this day and age, I totally agree with you. Whistleblowers are so important, but also the protection of sources is so important that you should not be able to force journalists to give up their sources. And like one of the things people don't realize in the WikiLeaks case is that if you go after WikiLeaks, which is sort of used to be like the middleman that accepted the envelope, looked at the envelope from the whistleblowers, looked at the content, and then determined if this was valid or not, or if it had any relevance to the general public, and then passed it on to some of the biggest medias in our world. If WikiLeaks is going to be taken down, the line has shortened for other medias to be on the persecution list if they publish something that is not to the liking of governments. And I think I've been puzzled why journalists in the United States have not stepped up for WikiLeaks in this case, and that they have not stepped up for the whistleblower that's been in jail now for 2 years. For a whole year, this whistleblower was a subject of torture, and still the UN Commissioner for Human Rights has not been giving access to this prisoner. And this is why my parliamentary group decided to send a letter to the Nobel Peace Prize Committee nominating this whistleblower to raise awareness about the fact that he's been in these conditions. And at the same time, another private has been acquitted from killing 24 civilians in Iraq. He's never been to jail. And the people that we see are shooting the civilians in the video collateral murder, none of them has had to suffer any consequences of these war crimes. These are war crimes that we witnessed in this video, where they shoot a wounded man and the people trying to help him. And I think we have to go beyond looking at people from different races as unequal to us as well. But I'm deeply concerned, and that's why I am doing everything that I can humanly possibly do to raise awareness about the situation for whistleblowers in our world. And I think we do need websites of the same nature as WikiLeaks if the path to the journalist is no longer safe. And it would be very stressful for a whistleblower knowing, like, if I leak this information, I am going to be putting the journalist in danger of being imprisoned, or he's going to have to reveal who I am. And the reason why we need whistleblowers now is the fact that the corporations are always growing bigger and bigger, and their defense teams, their lawyer departments, are now not only national, but they are international, and they know how to cross and abuse jurisdiction from all over the world to stop us getting access to information about their criminal activities.
It's so heavy what's going on, really, because in a way, what it's telling us is there isn't a safe haven for journalists anymore. We have to create it or invoke it or legalize it and set up a totally different structure and probably multi-levels of jurisdiction. But in my experience, it seems to me that peer pressure and the culture of fear and of criminalizing people who think differently, who are not buying into this endless terrorism problem, quote, end quote, then you're really stepping outside of the way we're being programmed to think and to function. And peer pressure being what it is today, it would look like, if we're not standing with the agenda of the government, the grid of that thinking and that paradigm, that we're supposedly against the government or we're treasonous to the government. That thinking is old guard mentality. You don't have to be against something to be for something else. And so these distinctions have blurred. But I really think that most people are subject to tremendous influences and peer pressure on a number of levels. And they want to be liked and they want to be accepted and they want to be part of their groups. And so unless they're willing to dislodge from all that, people do not operate their own minds. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I once translated a really good book that goes very, from English to Icelandic, that goes very much into this. It's called The Four Agreements by Don Mikael Ruiz.
Great book.
It's incredible. I love it. And it was such a privilege to translate it because I got really deep into the message in it. And at the same time, even if, and I do hope that our listeners are not feeling really hopeless by listening to us on this issue, I have to stress that there is tremendous hope and an incredible movement of people awakening and acting, not only awakening in their own space, but understanding that the only change we will ever have is by becoming co-creators of our own realities. We are never going to live in the world we dream of unless we participate in shaping it. And the beauty of that reality is that there are so many people realizing this. And you can see it throughout the United States with all the Occupy movements. There are so many incredible people working there together. And then they are also outreaching to all the different activists from all over the world. And we just don't get news of it. There are protests every day, massive protests and Occupy events and civil disobedience and alternative ways of doing things. It's happening everywhere, every day, all over the globe. And I think we sometimes might feel a little bit desperate because we don't know that there are so many people awakening. We don't know of them. But I have been following this very closely. And I think that, the next steps that we're going to be taking, and I'm hoping that Iceland can actually, because we were the first to have a breakdown and realization that everything we trusted failed us when we had the world's fourth worst financial meltdown. We had 4 big banks and they all collapsed at the same time, just a few years after they'd been privatized. And so everything we trusted to look after us failed. And that made people realize, very many people, that the time of trusting blindly in a system that has outgrown itself and is only self-serving, that time has to stop. And we have to figure out ways to make a new social agreement. Now, this is not happening with everybody, but at least